Hello and welcome to another video about Langston Hughes. In this one, we will be covering two short poems, Harlem and Cross. As we consider these poems, we'll be reviewing several of the terms that we have been covering and learning and start working toward how you can say something about what the poem might mean, or a better way to think about this is, because when you say like, what does a poem mean? It tends to say maybe there's only one meaning, but instead we'll be looking at how some of these terms allow us to think through a variety of questions, right? So fundamentally, what you need to do when you put forth your own interpretation is provide evidence. And your source of evidence are words on the page. And it's how you talk about those words that help you tell somebody else, hey, like this is what it means. So let's get started by looking at our first poem, Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? So quickly, we'll go through a couple of ideas here. Number one, how many stanzas are there? There are 4 stanzas of irregular length, right? So they are all, the first stanza and the last stanza have just 1 line, but the second stanza has 7 and the third stanza has 2. But we're going to start with just this first line. What happens to a dream deferred? A couple things to point out here. We have, first of all, some de-alliteration, and we also have a new literary term. And that literary term is a rhetorical question. We have a rhetorical question. And what a rhetorical question is something that doesn't expect a right answer. Rather, rhetorical questions are all about the drama. They pose a question. They're not looking for a right answer. Instead, it's about like opening up a pathway to exploration. In this way, it's almost philosophical, right? So Hughes is asking, or the speaker is asking, what happens if you defer? And to defer something is to put something off, to hold it off. What happens to a dream deferred? And so already we can think about, how is that alliteration working? And so we might say something like this. The de-alliteration in line 1 emphasizes the force, through emphatic consonant drumming, of the rhetorical question, while the placement of the adjective at the end of the sentence mimics the concept of deferredness, right? Because you can have a deferred dream. Hey, what kind of dream do you have? Oh, I have a deferred dream. I have a bad dream. I have a good dream. But then you can move it to the end. And so it's like, it defers that adjectival placement as well in a really provocative manner, all of which emphasize this idea of delay of a dream, not fulfilling a dream. And then we get a series of other examples here. So notice this entire next stanza is going to be built up around questions. Does it? And here we can ask another question. What is the antecedent of it? What is the antecedent of it? It is the dream deferred. All right, so it refers to the complete unit, dream deferred. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? So we have here a very structural unit of 4 different ideas. And all of them are going to be similes. All of them are going to be similes. So we have like, and like, right? So we have 4 similes. So let's look at the first one. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? So a raisin is made up of a grape that's already been dried. A raisin in the sun then is a twice dried grape. So it's extra hard. It's extra far removed from its original source of juicy plum tenderness. Number 2, or fester like a sore and then run. So a sore is like a wound, an agitation on the skin, say. When it festers, it becomes infected. And if you've ever had a hangnail or something, you might have had some goop pop out of it, pus. And so if it festers like a sore and then runs, it means not only has it started to get infected, but it's also leaking goop. We return to some food metaphors. Does it stink like rotten meat? Again, this is all talking about the dream. Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet. Like, is it like a cupcake that you leave out too long? The frosting gets all hard and you can't consume it. And so we have three similes here that have to do with food spoilage that's no longer edible, and one that has to do with a wound that goes bad. So we can even start thinking about how we can phrase an argument around this. So we might say something like, in stanza 2 of Harlem, Langston Hughes uses 4 rhetorical questions to explore what happens to a dream deferred. These all have negative connotations in common. Specifically, they relate to food and health. We then continue. Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. So this is awkward, right? If it's sagging, it's like a bag of rice on your shoulder. It's awkward, it's a burden. The big thing is that it's a burden. And then we get our last line, which Hughes also uses italics for to emphasize it. You don't always see these italics reproduced. And so I want to put too much weight on that at this point. I want to put some weight on this idea of explode, right? Explode, TNT, dynamite, something that can no longer be put back together. So what might this poem be talking about? Well, one suggestion is that it talks about racial equality. So if you think about Langston Hughes's poem, I Too, where he says, I'm the darker brother in response to Walt Whitman, then we can see you keep pushing back and deferring equality, these things can happen. And one of them that might happen is this last word of the poem, which is explode. And we can think, does that mean there's going to be violence? Or does that mean the dream itself will just disappear and the people maybe that held the dream are going to be destroyed, right? So this is ambiguity. That is, we can't come down one way or the other on who or what this poem is addressing. And that's why you as a reader are so important, because you can gather the evidence necessary in order to persuade somebody of your interpretation. So let's go on to our next poem, Cross. My old man's a white old man and my old mother's black. If ever I cursed my white old man, I take my curses back. If ever I cursed my black old mother and wished she were in hell, I'm sorry for that evil wish, and now I wish her well. My old man died in a fine big house. My ma died in a shack. I wonder where I'm gonna die, being neither white nor black. So the first thing that should jump out at you is just how regular this poem is, right? We're used to seeing 4-line stanzas. So we have 3 stanzas, 4 lines each. That means we have quatrains, and sure enough, we have our expected rhymes in the 2nd and 4th line of each stanza. It's very, very familiar work. So we begin. My old man's a white old man, my old mother's black. The thing that we learn here is that the speaker of the poem is mixed race, right? One black mother and one black father. In the second part of that stanza, we have this hypothetical. If ever I cursed, like if at any time I cursed my white old man, I take my curses back. All right, so we just have here simple take back. But then, and that's 2 lines. We get 2 lines to the father. But then we have 4 lines about the mother. So in poems, space is at a premium. You might think about it like real estate. That means if you give one person more space, maybe it conveys something. You can make an argument about it. Here, what we see is Hughes has more to say about his curses to his mother, right? If ever I curse my black old mother, that's the exact same structure as we just had. But then we get a detail, right? We didn't get this kind of detail with the dad. It's like, and wish she were in hell. Even more interesting is the next lines. I'm sorry for that evil wish, right? So there we have regret. And now I wish her well. The speaker did not apply these ideas to our previous person, right? That means there's more attention given to the mother, right? We have regret with I'm sorry. We have that use of the adjective evil, right? He's giving details about these things. And now I wish her well. We have a new wish, okay? So we have the implication that the speaker does not say these things about the dad. The dad, he's not thinking, hey, you know, it was bad of me to curse my dad. No. He's like, I was probably right to do it, but I still take it back. I'm still like removing that, but I don't regret it. Whereas with the mother, we have the idea of regret. So this is very careful use of diction and poetic space. We have here diction and poetic space. And what I mean by poetic space is the number of lines in a poem that you give to a topic. And we wrap it up. My old man died in a fine big house. My ma died in a shack. So what do we learn here? We have rich and poor, right? The idea of a shack being a structure that has barely 4 walls and a roof versus a fine big house. And notice we get this awesome, awesome thing with adjectives here that Hughes does. We have 2 adjectives that are decorating the house, whereas shack stands all on its own, this monosyllabic hard word, which Hughes very, very provocatively rhymes with black, implying that maybe a lot of other people that are black have this kind of living situation. So this raises one of the fundamental interpretive questions about this. Like, what is the relationship between the dad and the mom? So a common thing that comes up is the idea of servants, but we also have the potential to think about it maybe anachronistically as slaves. So black women, servants, and slaves. And that raises a whole number of issues about choice when it comes to the birth of the speaker of this poem. And at the end, we have this little bit of uncertainty with I wonder. I wonder where I'm gonna die, being neither white nor black. And this kind of fits into racial passing, right? Will I be able to pass as white or black? And if I do, am I gonna be forced into one path of life, right? Like, how much choice do I have with what I can do with my life? Can I go do something else, or am I gonna be forced into this path that's predicated on the color of my skin? And all of this brings us maybe back to the title of the poem, Cross. And that gets us to this idea of all the different crosses. So we might consider cross refers to the crossed races, right, being mixed race. We can also think about the cross as the church cross. So for instance, like Jesus' death and his crucifixion, where Jesus died for people's sins, and the speaker is also forgiving and taking back sins. So there's almost some Christological imagery there. And then finally, we have like a crossroads where you have to make a decision between 2 options. And we have evidence for that with that uncertainty of I wonder, right? I wonder if I will or can pass or not. But then we get this idea like, if not, what models exist for me? Like, what does it mean to be in this in-between space in a society that's structured on dichotomies and binaries? And I, the speaker, inhabit somewhere in between. And that is Harlem and Cross by Langston Hughes.